The young man pursued immortality and self-taught the art of ancient alchemy, but unexpectedly died on a night full of thunder and lightning. His soul traveled through endless time and space, becoming a 3-year-old abandoned baby. The journey was bumpy, and he was bought and sold, forced to become a slave. His unexpected talent awakened, but it led to his end of being dug for his heart and pulse by others. After 2 resurrections from life and death, he had endless opportunities. Unexpected circumstances, unexpected time and space, unexpected people and things. Let's watch the ups and downs of this floating life. Chapter 1. Qingyang Sect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 10,000 miles of Xuanhuan, with the establishment of the Qingyang Sect, towering veins for thousands of miles, and 5 yin and 5 yang. The outer gate of Qingyang Sect, on the yin-yang platform. Junior brother, if you can defeat me today, you will receive Master's true biography. What do you think of this? A woman dressed in white stood on stage, smiling brightly at the young man in front of her. The young man looked at her coldly with a displeased expression and said, "Do you want me to lose to you and then take away my master's true biography? Hee, since you know, why bother asking more?" The woman sneered and continued, looking at the young man with a hint of malice in her eyes. "Let's have a competition. I'll take my move first. If I win, you'll commit suicide and disappear forever from now on." "I won't lose." As soon as the young man finished speaking, his figure had moved like a ghost and rushed towards the woman. The silver sword in his hand pierced the woman's chest, and she quickly dodged. At the same time, her right hand formed a claw and fiercely grabbed his throat. After 2 moves, the woman in white collapsed to the ground panting heavily, her cold eyes filled with coldness. "How could you possibly beat me?" The woman turned to look at the young man with a frightened expression on her face. The young man was really too fast. The young man didn't look directly at the woman on the ground, but said calmly, "You lost." The young man turned around and walked off the stage, his figure quickly disappearing. "No." The screams of the woman echoed on the vast and boundless arena, lingering for a long time. The woman is the eldest disciple of the Qingyang Sect's Xianin Peak, the strongest young generation in the entire Xianin Peak, and also the personal disciple of the Xianin Peak Master. However, she was defeated by a young man who had just entered the sect for less than 3 months with 2 moves, and she wanted him to disappear forever. If this matter were to be spread, where would the face of the entire Xianin Peak turn? "Junior sister, why are you so foolish? He's just a waste." A handsome man hugged the woman lying paralyzed on the ground with a painful expression on his face. The woman had tears on her face and her eyes were blank, as if she hadn't heard the man beside her. She stared blankly at the ruins below the arena. A cold light flashed in the man's eyes and he muttered in a low voice, "Junior sister, I swear I won't be a person until this revenge is avenged. Senior brother, I have my own opinion on this matter. Humph, if you dare to do anything foolish, I will immediately bring my master back and let him kill that little beast with his own hands." The man fiercely threatened. The woman raised her head, her gaze burning, and said firmly, "Senior brother, please rest assured that I will be fine. Remember, only you are my hope." The man reached out his hand and gently wiped away the tears on the woman's face. "Thank you, senior brother." The woman gently said thank you and then slowly got up. "Senior brother, let's go." The man nodded and helped the woman leave the arena. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, it's half a month. On this day, the weather was clear and cloudless. The young man was practicing swordsmanship in the courtyard when suddenly a gust of strong wind hit, causing his hair to dance wildly and his clothes to make a hunting sound. What a strong spiritual wave! The young man frowned slightly, stopped practicing swordsmanship, and looked towards the direction where the spiritual energy wave came from. At this moment, 2 figures suddenly appeared in the distance. One of them was a burly figure, wearing armor, holding a long spear, and exuding a cold and imposing aura. The other person was dressed in white, holding a folding fan in hand, and had a graceful appearance. "Who are you?" the young man shouted in a low voice. "Kid, you're so bold that you don't even know us." The man in white sneered. The young man shook his head, recalled for a moment, and said emotionlessly, "I don't know." "Ha! Don't know each other." The man in white laughed out loud, then pointed to the armored man beside him and said, "Kid, it seems that you are still a newcomer. I didn't know that this is the leader of our Qingyang Sect's Iron Cavalry Army, Iron Tiger." Upon hearing this, the young man raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "So it's Brother Iron Tiger. Why do you look familiar to me?" I just like to hear you call me Iron Tiger Big Brother or something." Iron Tiger laughed at the words and said, "Let me tell you, we are the elite Iron Guards of the Qingyang Sect, and you are just a beginner in martial arts. Do you still want to fight Senior Sister Roshue? My name is Su Chen. Are you here to defend Senior Sister Roshue from injustice?" Su Chen's eyes were slightly fixed, and the sword in his hand was already tightly clenched. Anyone who found fault would die. This is his 15th year in this world. You're quite clever, but unfortunately you've offended someone you shouldn't have. Iron Tiger sneered. No matter where, compared with you old fogies, my little boy is far from me. Su Chen smiled scornfully and did not care, and did not give each other a good look. Where are you from, little bastard? How dare you talk to us Iron Guards like this? It's just a wild boy in the mountains, just kill him directly. The young man in white folded a fan and lightly pointed, gesturing for the Iron Tiger to take action directly. Wild boy, how many cities are there in Xianshan? Can't we still not know? Where are you from? How dare you be so arrogant? Iron Tiger questioned Su Chen using the words of the young man in white. You don't care where I come from, I just ask you, dare you come to the arena with me now? Su Chen stood up straight and looked at the Iron Tiger without any hesitation. Kid, what do you think Qingyang Sect is? How dare you act around? Iron Tiger said coldly, let's punch me first. Since that's the case, I won't hesitate. After Su Chen finished speaking, his figure suddenly disappeared into place. The next second he appeared, he had already arrived behind Iron Tiger. You! Iron Tiger was shocked. Before he could react, Su Chen swung his fist. Bang! With a muffled sound, Iron Tiger was thrown into a big somersault by Su Mo. The folding fan man had just swung his fist when Su Mo had already punched him in the stomach. Bang! There was another muffled sound, and the man responded by curling up and hugging his abdomen, unable to make a sound. Su Chen scanned the surroundings and saw no one, so he jumped onto Iron Tiger's body. He punched both his left and right fists together, causing Iron Tiger and the folding fan man to suffer from bruises and swelling, almost crying without tears. Dog bullies, do you really think I'm afraid of you? Su Chen withdrew his fist, took his sword, and walked towards the house, murmuring, I was planning to finish refining my sword before I went to find my master. It seems like it's too early. On a towering peak, purple thunder rolls and roars, creating a particularly dangerous atmosphere. Two elderly men in green robes were stroking their beards and drinking tea, and their gaze was on the distant Qingyang sect towering in the mountains. Brother Qingyang, your disciples are too young. Are you sure you want to use that yin-yang body quenching technique? The old man on the left seems to have some doubts. Brother Xianin, that young man has already gone through life and death. I think he should be able to stick to his principles and face his demons directly. The old man on the right said with a certain tone. Okay, since Brother Qingyang said so, then Xuanyinzi will accompany you on a walk. Xuanyinzi smiled slightly and raised his hand to drop the black piece on the right side of the chessboard. Since ancient times, it has been difficult to achieve success if one's mind is not firm. Qingyangzi also picked up a white chess piece and placed his two fingers on the chessboard. One yin and one yang are all visible on a chessboard, and a chessboard fairy mountain vaguely appears. The pillars on the chessboard Immortal Mountain are divided into two colors, one black and one white, with a clear distinction between yin and yang energy, not up or down. Chapter 2. Xiyue. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Young Su Chen was a person who traveled through time, but he was only 3 years old when he was inside this body, and was an abandoned baby at that time. However, the spiritual energy in this world was strange, and he soon adapted to the body of the abandoned baby and replaced it. It's just that the 15 years of life have been difficult to calm down, and the ups and downs during it are even more indescribable. 1,000 miles north of Qingyang lies a ridge-shaped Xuanhuan, which resembles the starting point of a cemetery, hence its name Qingyang. Under the Qingyang Mountains, there are green mountains and beautiful waters, with streams winding towards the distance. After that, thousands of miles of square-shaped coffins stretch out. Xuanhuan Mountain is located 2/3 of the coffin, making it one of Su Chen's destinations. The master said that the north of the tomb is the Xuanhuan Mountain. As long as I can pass through that Xuanhuan Mountain, he will teach me the art of becoming an immortal. I need to hurry. The young man, dressed in cloth clothes, carrying an iron sword, and carrying a cloth bag on his shoulder, walked towards the source of the water flow in the north of the tomb with great strides. After a long journeying facing the abyss for 3 days, Su Chen looked at the green abyss in front of him with a shocked expression on his face and said, "Is this the Linghuan?" Su Chen had never seen any spiritual spring before, only heard of its ability to wash a person's bones and skin, transforming them. At this moment, as a traveler, he appeared somewhat novel, filled with both excitement and doubt. If this is really Linghuan, why hasn't anyone in Qingyang Sect ever consumed this Linghuan? He was very conflicted in his heart, as if he was struggling. He wanted to try and see if it was a spiritual spring, but he was also afraid that there was something wrong with the water. Assessment is crucial. Su Chen sighed as he looked at the green abyss in front of him, and then walked around the mountains on the edge of the green abyss, determined to remain steadfast in his heart. The forests in the mountains are mostly covered with withered branches and leaves, and the soil is fertile and moist. Be careful every step you take, otherwise it will take minutes to slide from the mountain to the foot. Su Chen walked very carefully. In order to make his way, he had to use a hard stick like a branch to clear the way, pulling and manipulating the withered branches and leaves on the ground, as well as other unknown strange things. As a traveler, his predecessor studied the ancient alchemy alone in order to achieve immortality. He thought he could achieve immortality with the help of alchemy in ancient iron while on the 9-star line, but unfortunately, he accidentally crossed over, traversing into a dynasty called Yongzheng. Driving is a very arduous task, and as an ordinary person, even Su Chen, who has died twice and come back to life, cannot bear it. He has been walking for 3 consecutive days and cannot move much. Backed against a large banyan tree, Su Chen kept panting heavily and took out a cowhide water bag from his pocket, carefully taking 2 sips. Although Su Chen's hands trembled violently, he did not spill a drop of water. After drinking, I put the wooden stopper back on and put it back in the cloth bag. If one were to cultivate into an immortal, having a space treasure would be much easier. Su Chen sighed long, took out a bitter cake, took a small bite, and then walked step by step towards the depths of the mountain range. Along the way, there were many strange trees and fruits. Although the colors were bright and dazzling, Su Chen, a poor boy, did not pick them out of curiosity or poverty because he had not read the words in this place and did not know what fruits could be eaten or what fruits could not be eaten. Passing through a wild medicinal field, Su Chen barely recognized the several medicinal herbs he used to prepare wine for Xiyue back then, and remembered Xiyue's explanation at that time. Purple plant roots belong to the cold and slightly toxic genus, which can treat summer heat. Although the ground root is a poison, it conflicts with the toxin of the purple plant root. Qianzi is colorless, tasteless, and slightly sweet, but it is the holy medicine for disinfection. Xiyue had a handsome appearance and was a middle-aged man. Although he looked handsome, what caught Su Chen's attention the most was Jian Xiu's starry spirit sword and words. Looking at the purple grass plants, tall rooted plants arranged in rows, and silver-colored fruit plants with leaves in front of him, Su Chen also took out the golden wine pot that Jian Xiulin had given him when he left from the bag. He is not a good memory person, and he does not dwell on the sword and words of Jian Xiu. Shu Jin Hua Gu, Hua Shui heal injuries. Su Chen directly reached out and pulled out 3 medicinal herbs, carefully picked the leaves, shaved off the root bark, pulled off the fruit, and put it into a small wine pot. The small wine jug is not big, can be held by both hands, and has strange ancient patterns carved all over its body. The golden body of the jug is like a golden glow, with 2 semicircles on top and bottom meeting, like an antique gourd from ancient times. After Su Chen prepared the medicinal herbs and placed them in the wine pot, he gently shook them, carefully listening to the sound of the wine and feeling the sound inside the pot. Seemingly nostalgic for Jian Xiu, Su Chen gently stroked the body of the teapot and opened it to take a look. Then, he took a small sip and stuffed the stopper into the cloth bag. The mountain range doesn't seem very far, but walking is very long, and every time it makes Su Chen feel suffocated. Every time he felt uncomfortable or overworked, Su Chen would take a small sip of wine to relieve his physical and mental fatigue. He couldn't stop, this was his warning as a traveler to himself. Su Chen kept walking, scanning the surroundings ahead, searching for the nearest road to Qipan Mountain, and finding a safe point of travel. As night fell, Su Chen stayed in a quiet valley among the bamboo forests. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed slightly. I saw a small courtyard not far away, and the wall was not high. A young girl was sitting at a stone table in the courtyard, wearing a thin blue and white dress and a black headband fluttering in the wind. The girl lowered her head and couldn't see her appearance clearly, but judging from her figure, she was undoubtedly a beautiful woman. The girl sat quietly there, holding a book and reading the stories in it, occasionally laughing. Obviously, she was very happy. It's so sweet and fragrant. Suddenly, Su Chen's nose twitched slightly, and he smelled a faint fragrance coming from his nose. He couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva, his eyes slightly closed, and he took a deep breath of the fragrance. He had never smelled this kind of aroma from childhood to adulthood, which couldn't help but intoxicate his mind. It was such a wonderful journey. The girl was slightly stunned and looked up at the outside of the courtyard, looking at Su Chen's appearance. A smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Hello, little brother." The girl stood up and slowly walked towards the place where Su Chen was. Su Chen smelled the tempting aroma and couldn't help but open his eyes. A beautiful face appeared in his sight, and he was momentarily confused. The girl's figure is exquisite and graceful, and the long skirt on her body sets off the girl's dreamlike and fairy-like appearance. The girl's skin is fair as jade, and can be broken by blowing and bouncing. Her black hair is as soft as ink and dances with the wind, with 2 strands of green hair hanging from her forehead. "Are you?" Su Chen was a bit at a loss. Although he had seen many women, it was the first time he had met a woman as beautiful as before. "My name is Xiyue, you can call me senior sister." The woman pursed her lips and smiled sweetly. Her pupils seemed to have spirituality, making Su Chen involuntarily want to smile and look at Feng Xiu. "Senior sister Xiyue, did I go to the wrong place on Qipan Mountain?" Su Chen felt a bit confused at this moment, but instead appeared a bit foolish. "Junior brother, come with me," Xiyue reminded Su Chen. Her figure had already disappeared several meters away. "Okay." Although Su Chen was not sure why, he knew that Xiyue was definitely waiting for him here, so he didn't hesitate. Entering the courtyard, the green spiritual energy rushed towards us, so rich that it was somewhat infuriating. Entering the inner room was a quaint stone tablet surrounded by yin and yang energy, while Xiyue cut her hand and pressed it against the extreme yin. "You scratch your palm and press it against the extreme sun on the ancient monument," said Xiyue straightforwardly, with no hint of pain on her face. "Yes, senior sister." Su Chen didn't dare to wait too long, afraid that the beautiful senior sister would bleed too much and develop anemia, so he quickly followed suit. When the palm came into contact with the stone tablet, the two energies of yin and yang rotated, and the extreme cathode and yang appeared at the same time. Xiyue and Su Chen's clothes shattered instantly, exposing their bodies. It's so cold. Xiye's whole body was shrouded in yin energy, and even the ground was covered in frost. Soon, she trembled with cold. What's going on? Her whole body was scorching hot, as if she had been burned by the scorching sun. Su Chen's body temperature skyrocketed and soon became a humanoid fireball. Hurry up and hug me, I'm so cold, I'm freezing to death. Xiyue struggled to break the ice and quickly embraced the humanoid fireball, which was also Su Chen's embrace. Chapter 3. Yin-Yang Body Refining. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. At the moment when Xiyue entered her arms, Su Chen suddenly felt that the temperature throughout her body had been balanced, and there was no longer the painful feeling of being burned to death. One woman and one man, one yin and one yang, the two breath paths quickly blended, but there was no fusion of the two breath paths, instead they stood in opposition. Senior sister, aren't I going to accept the master's test? How could I be like this here at this time? Although Su Chen was holding on to Xiyue at this moment, he didn't mean to take advantage of her, but planned to separate her. This is the first assessment, using the energy of yin and yang to quench the body. Xiyue reached out and gently stroked Su Chen's body, constantly pulling out the desire in Su Chen's heart. Perhaps Xiyue was more powerful, but Su Chen couldn't push her body away and instead was held tighter by her. Senior sister, please don't do this. It's the first time I've been treated like this by a woman, and I can't help it. Su Chen felt her skin was particularly sensitive, and even had a desire to possess Xiyue in her heart. Yin-Yang quenching is one of the best ways to cultivate Tai Xian Qi. I have been waiting for 10 years and cannot give up. Xiyue spoke, although she was surrounded by Yin Qi, Su Chen still felt the unique charm that belonged to women clearly and meticulously. Senior sister, I'm about to lose control. Think of a way to help me control myself. Although Su Chen is not afraid of death, if he breaks the beauty of Xiyue, he still can't bear it. Gudu. Xiyue kissed Su Chen directly, her delicate body seamlessly fitting into Su Chen's naked body, making Su Chen's desire unbearable. Teacher. Before Su Chen could resist, he was forced by Xiyue, and a passage composed of yin and yang appeared on the stone tablet. Su Chen and Xiyue were forced to inhale into it, and he couldn't bear it anymore. He gently caressed Xiyue's tender and delicate body and private parts in his arms, while passionately kissing and lingering with Xiyue. In an exquisite jade palace, on a double jade chair, Xiyue was constantly entangled with Su Chen. The energy inside the two miraculously moved some powerful energy inside the jade palace, as if they were practicing. On the peak of the 10,000 zhang purple lightning, Xuanhuan and Qingyang looked suspicious and very surprised. Qingyang. It's strange, why are there signs of disappearing without a trace? Xuanhuan said, there is no space on the yin-yang steel, where will they go? Qingyang. It's strange, shouldn't it be? Although they are important figures at the beginning of the mountain, they are helpless and can only wait quietly. In the Jade Palace, Xiyue and Su Chen shyly gazed at each other face to face. They were not looking at each other, but at a yin-yang talisman between them. Inside the talisman pattern, there are two extreme fish intertwined, swimming between the heaven and earth in the pattern, constantly absorbing the spiritual energy inside the palace, swallowing the mysterious breath of the Tai Xian, continuously absorbing and refining the energy inside the Jade Palace, and transporting it to the Dantian inside the bodies of Su Chen and Xiyue. The spiritual power inside the two of them rapidly grew under energy irrigation, and the Dantian turned into the appearance of Danhai. Su Chen's physical body gradually became stronger, and his six senses and perception became even stronger, allowing him to feel Xiyue's breath clearly. Looking at Xiyue in front of me, I couldn't help but be fascinated. This is the real version of her, right? Senior sister, I love you. I love you too. With a soft moan, the two completely merged into this powerful energy. The two people in the Jade Palace are constantly blending and their energy is constantly impacting their bodies, allowing them to reach the peak of their physical training in a very short time. This was an unprecedented experience, and Xiyue felt that something was changing inside her body, as if a powerful force could be nurtured at any moment. Su Chen also had the same feeling. He felt something inside him, as if it was rapidly surging and wandering through the sea of Danhai. The mysterious power inside Su Chen's body was slowly strengthening and growing, gradually forming a black lightning beam. It kept swimming in Su Chen's Danhai, absorbing external energy and strengthening Su Chen's physique, causing the mysterious power inside Su Chen to slowly climb again. With the continuous improvement of their physical fitness and 6 consciousnesses, the two couldn't help but become intense once again. After an unknown amount of joy, Su Chen's strength rapidly improved, and his physical fitness appeared to be even stronger. Moreover, they were constantly improving, as if he had not gone online. Na Ling Jing. Absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, using oneself as a furnace, refining qi and transforming liquid. The ability to refine 10 drops of spiritual liquid at a time is considered a 1-level realm, while refining into 100 drops at a time is considered complete. Spirit Breath Realm. Transforming liquid into breath, 100 drops into 1 breath, 1,000 drops into 1 breath, and 100 breaths into a 10-fold realm is perfect. Condensing Pill Realm. Refining breath into Yuan, refining Yuan into Dan, refining Dan into spirit, refining spirit into gold, refining gold into Xian, is called Xian Dan. Xiyue and Su Chen seem to have skipped the previous 3 cultivation realms and directly started the cultivation of the Lotus Transformation Realm. Huayan Realm. Xian Dan is the source, and the soul sea gives birth to Lotus. Lotus undergoes 3 transformations, and the 3 Xian Dan are spirits. The 2 of them did not have a mysterious pill in their elixir, but a crystal clear colorless lotus grew in the soul sea. The lotus had 81 petals, floating on the soul sea to absorb the soul breath that had been liquefied from the soul sea. What's the situation? Su Chen's voice came from within the lotus, full of doubt. Shouldn't it be directly reaching the early stage of the lotus transformation realm? Xiyue's voice also came from within the lotus, somewhat shocked. The lotus changes from crystal to white, from white to green, and from green to gold. Each stage has 3 transitions, divided into 3 stages. The golden texture on the golden lotus is clear, with a brilliant golden light and occasional flickering runes. The physical bodies of Su Chen and Xiyue are being reshaped by wonderful energy, with both elegance and beauty coexisting, and their breath is holy. When Su Chen looked at Xiyue again, he saw that she had undergone a transformation and had taken on a different appearance. Her figure is tall and slender, with a stunning appearance, especially her bright and transparent eyes. Xiyue was wearing a blue dress and a thin white gauze robe, with her long hair casually flowing down her back. A head of green silk with a soft and glossy luster, like a black waterfall falling on the shoulders. Senior sister. Upon hearing the familiar voice, Xiyue also opened her eyes. Su Chen, who caught her eye, was even more handsome than before. His face made her heart tremble with a thud, and even the faint fragrance she exhaled was intermittent. Buzz. Buzz. The sound of swords buzzing, sound waves echoing, causing people's spirits to shake and their eyes to wander. Looking up, I saw Su Chen's iron sword floating above their heads at some point, and at this moment, the pitch-black body of the sword seemed to have been carved. The sword has an ancient and simple body, with an overall pitch-black color. Each moment, a blue lotus pattern appears, and the essence beads in the sword center also transform into small green lotus. The outer edge of the green lotus is surrounded by 5 ancient patterns with different textures. The 5 ancient seals are unique patterns from ancient times, namely gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Tianji sword. Extreme pattern. Su Chen inexplicably thought of the name of the sword and the 5 ancient patterns on the periphery of the sword's heart. Black water sword. Xiyue's face was pale, her whole body tense up and down, and her eyes filled with fear. What does it mean? Su Chen was puzzled by Xiyue's anxious and uneasy expression. The black water sword comes from outside the sky, and it is said to die upon touching it, with 10 deaths but no life. Xiyue nervously stared at the fading pitch-black iron sword, her voice trembling as she said, "This sword is called the ominous sword. It is said that the person selected by this sword will die very miserably." Really? Su Chen was not afraid, but instead appeared to regard it as a treasure and said happily, "I really like it. It has saved my life many times." The pitch-black sword body has already been engraved with a blue ancient pattern. Lotus pattern, and the last pattern has been completed, gradually enveloping the sword body with a blue spiritual breath. A blue texture condensed into a rune pattern from the heart of the sword, and Su Chen's consciousness was connected to this sword, seemingly becoming a part of Su Chen. Stop. Su Chen chuckled softly, and the sword flew obediently into Su Chen's eyebrows, floating on the golden soul lotus. Sword pattern. Xiyue looked at the blue spiritual pattern between Su Chen's forehead and couldn't help but be surprised, appearing very puzzled. How dare you refine it? Su Chen was very embarrassed, he didn't understand Xiyue's words. When my bloodline awakened, it was it, Su Chen waved his hand and proudly said, "It's the spiritual sword within my bloodline." Xiyue had a feeling that the young man in front of her was definitely a fool, but when she thought of the feeling of being spoiled by Su Chen, she changed her mindset towards Su Chen. "It seems that you will be a great figure in the future, climbing to the summit and overlooking the entire land of China." "There's nothing wrong with that," Su Chen remained non-committal. As a traveler and occasionally possessing the mysterious soul technique, it's difficult to do it. It must be that the Soul Transformation Classic is not an ordinary thing. Chapter 4. Qingyang Meridian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xiyue couldn't help but laugh and cry when she saw Su Chen's right expression. "You said you were fat, but you still carried it." Su Chen was somewhat speechless, looking at Xiyue's jade cheeks, and his heart also had a sense of spoiling. But Su Chen did not show it, because he was still too weak now, and he couldn't protect the beautiful senior sister in front of him, Xiyue. Cultivating into an immortal is his greatest goal, because immortals are superior to others, even if they cannot be compared to other immortals, they are invincible beings in the world. Like those who used to harm him, they could also be extinguished with just a flick of their fingers. "Junior brother, you." Xiyue stared at Su Chen with some longing and shyness, saying, "Can you be honest with me again? They can't resist being lonely anymore." This. Su Chen didn't speak, and he didn't know what was wrong with Xiyue. Why is there such a desire for dissatisfaction? You don't want to, do you? Xiyue's eyes dimmed a bit, and her face was also a bit ugly. She has always been proud, and she is also a virgin. She just had her virginity broken by Su Chen, so naturally she can't tolerate such rejection. Su Chen looked at Xiyue's stunning face and couldn't bear it. He had wasted his life in his past life and had never met any woman. At this moment, he couldn't control himself and really liked Xiyue, even to the bone. "Alright, senior sister, don't daydream." Su Chen reached out and caressed Xiyue's head, comforting her softly, "I just don't know what to do." "You're really stupid." Xiyue glanced at him and said, "Then learn from me. Let's practice together." Upon hearing Xiyue's words, Su Chen was momentarily stunned and then smiled. He reached out to embrace Xiyue and spoiled her, agreeing, "Okay, let's practice together." "Ah." My body is not good, I can't bear it. Junior brother, please slow down and don't hurt me. Su Chen placed Xiyue on the jade chair, and he also lay next to her. Then he reached out his hand to take Xiyue and let her head rest on his shoulder. Xiyue closed her eyes and had a happy smile on her face, appearing to be enjoying this wonderful moment. Su Chen felt a bit awkward. After all, this was their second time being honest with each other. The two of them opened their eyes and looked at each other. For an instant, the atmosphere was somewhat ambiguous. Su Chen couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed and said, "Senior sister, why don't you take off the remaining clothes yourself? I'm a bit at a loss." After Su Chen finished speaking, he was about to get up from the jade chair, but to his surprise, he was grabbed by Xiyue. Su Chen looked at Xiyue in confusion, unsure of what she meant. Xiyue immediately pulled Su Chen onto her body and kissed her. A familiar smell immersed Su Chen, and he suddenly understood how to dote on Xiyue. On the Purple Thunder Peak, Qingyang and Xuanhuan were gazing at the yin-yang steel, and at this moment, their faces were solemn. Purple lightning strikes, and purple energy is generated. A formation appears from the Purple Thunder Peak, shining brightly and dazzling. Within the formation, purple chi rapidly condenses into beads at a visible speed, with dark and light colors, until the overall transparency is pink-purple. The beads are not big, but they have two, each of which is the best among the beads. If held by hand, it is only the size of the palm, and there is no problem holding it round, but there are gaps. Upon closer inspection, there is actually a purple seal pattern inside, which is unique and contains the power of purple thunder. Purple Thunder Ball. Qingyang and Xuanhuan were one of the shock, speaking in unison and couldn't help but look at each other in shock. The refining of purple thunder jade is extremely difficult. It only takes 10,000 years for a strand of purple energy to condense, and this pearl has a composition of at least 10 million years. Qingyang spoke, her eyes filled with shock. Besides, there are still two of them, and their internal purple thunder rules are complete. Xuanhuan, like Qingyang, appeared very shocking. Is it them? Qingyang and Xuanhuan guessed a possibility at the same time, and then they both looked at the yin and yang steel in the bamboo grove courtyard. In the Jade Palace, Su Chen and Xiyue had already gone through 3 hours and 6 minutes and 6 seconds. After completing the task, the two did not indulge again, but instead joined hands and looked up at the sky above the Jade Palace. The rotation of the pole diagram seems to have a universe, and under long-term gaze, it is no longer a picture, but two black and white pole fish with distinct scales. The polar fish swam around and were extremely happy. There seemed to be a black and white square object inside, and both fish moved because of it. The opening of the Qingyang sect in the Yin-Yang Classic, the treasure of the Yongzheng sect. Xiyue's beautiful eyes widened, as if she had seen a miracle. Is it very powerful? Although Su Chen knew that Qingyang sect was powerful, he did not enter the inner gate and had no idea what the Yin-Yang Classic was. Buzz. The extremely sword buzzing in Su Chen's eyebrows made an excited sound and suddenly flew out. The Yin-Yang Classic was instantly pulled by it, transformed into a soul scripture, and merged into Su Chen's soul sea. Before Xiyue could be shocked, a small white circle appeared outside the green lotus in the heart of the extreme sword, which was not the color but the flowing energy. To the eyes of ordinary people, even with raised dewdrops, it is difficult to see because the chi is so unique and plain, just like a decorative sword texture. Xiyue's eyes stared directly at Su Chen, looking very resentful, as if saying, "How can you swallow good things alone?" Su Chen appeared bewildered because he didn't let Jijian do it, but Jijian did it on his own. Buzz. Buzz. The Jijian sword made a buzzing sound again, as if mocking Xiyue. Then it shook the sword twice and flew back into Su Chen's eyebrows. You. Xiyue was so angry that she gritted her teeth, but could only give up because she couldn't beat that extreme sword. It is recorded in the ancient books of Qingyang sect, and Xiyue was accidentally seen in the Shuj. Because she was born with a Yin and Xianyin constitution, she was selected by an elder in the book pavilion of Xianyin Peak to become a book administrator. The purpose is very simple. New disciples tend to have lofty goals, let alone Xiyue, who was only 6 years old when she joined the sect and was a talented genius, making it difficult to be remembered. The reason why Elder Shuj wanted to bury Xiyue for so many years is twofold. Firstly, to exercise her mood, secondly, to wait for the best opportunity. Now that Xiyue is 19 years old, although she has a good mental state, years of waiting have made her eager to start practicing. Therefore, during the 3 months of Su Chen's arrival in the sect, she also paid close attention to Su Chen. Because according to the elder of the book pavilion, Su Chen's bloodline awakened at the age of 7 and he showed extraordinary talent within a year. Later, he was criticized and killed by someone at the age of 9. He was also present at the time, and at that time, Su Chen only had his dantian taken away by his bloodline. At the age of 10, he was unexpectedly resurrected and once again heard the news, but unfortunately, the people in the secular world were too dark for him to see. At the age of 11, he heard that the young man had encountered Jian Xiu by chance and thought that with his talent, he would soon become famous, so he gave up the idea of recruiting. At the age of 12, he heard that the young man had been drained of blood by someone digging his heart. When he arrived, the young man had already been thrown into the pile of 10,000 people behind the Spring Breeze Pavilion. Chapter 5. Primordial Spiritual Body Formation. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The Xuanhuan Pavilion is a small pavilion on the back mountain of the Yichuan courtyard, and it is also a barrier between 10,000 people, which is why outsiders are prohibited from entering. It is said that Yichuan Academy admits tens of thousands of skilled women every year, and there are always incidents of causing harm. However, the information is quickly blocked, and few people know about it. Obviously, the Yichuan courtyard has the background and support of the imperial court, and ordinary people cannot shake it at all. Although the elder of the book pavilion is a powerful elder of the Qingyang sect, he still cannot escape the temperament of a literati, and naturally cannot go to places like the Yichuan Academy to investigate. When Su Chen was 15 years old, which was the first 3 months when he came to Qingyang sect, the elder of the book pavilion also truly met Su Chen. However, Su Chen was a pseudonym, and the elder of the book pavilion was not aware that Su Chen was the person he had been searching for before, because Su Chen's appearance had changed after 2 lives. Su Chen's talent displayed in the outside world was too amazing, and he had a perseverance that surpassed that of ordinary people, so he was passed down a set of health-preserving sword techniques called Lotus Sutra by the elder of the book pavilion. The elder's request to Su Chen was to go to Qipan Mountain, 1,000 miles north of Qingyang sect, to start the assessment and use the cultivation method to lure Su Chen to work hard. Xiyue was arranged by the elder of the book pavilion to arrive at the Qingzhou mountain forest in Qiling 2 months in advance. Because the elder of the book pavilion discovered an ancient book called Qingyang Baodian. This method is exactly a dual cultivation method, and it must be practiced together with the pure yang body and the extreme yin body. The key is to take off your clothes and treat each other naked, refining your body with the 2 energies of yin and yang. If there is a sun in the morning, the qi body of Tai Xian will be born on its own. The reason why Xiyue did not refuse Su Chen and actively embraced her was that her yin energy was extremely strong, and she couldn't bear it. 2. It was the elder of the book pavilion who mentioned the yin-yang classic to her. 3. It's because she doesn't want to be like that teenager, with her heart dug out, her pulse drawn, and not even a drop of blood left. Of course, except for Qingyangzi and Zunyinzi, no one knew about Su Chen's rebirth, because they were also informed by the previous leader of Qingyang, who was their master. Qingyang. In the Jade Palace, Xiyue stared at Su Chen like this, and Su Chen couldn't help but laugh or cry. Look! Su Chen suddenly pointed behind Xiyue. Xiyue was momentarily taken aback and turned to look around. Unexpectedly, Su Chen immediately hugged Xiyue and played a rogue role. Xiyue's face turned red and her heart beat as Su Chen made her whole body extremely hot. The extreme sword in Su Chen's eyebrows reflected a stunning figure of a woman. He raised his hand and slapped Su Chen a few times, causing his mind to heat up. Who? Su Chen stopped playing hooligan, carefully put down Xiyue, and turned to look. After scanning around, Su Chen didn't notice anything, except for Xiyue in front of her, whose face was still flushed and her skin was white with a hint of redness. What's wrong? Xiyue was a bit puzzled, as if Su Chen's sudden stop had made her a bit uncomfortable. The yin and yang energies lingered around, and Su Chen and Xiyue returned to the yin and yang steel. The yin and yang energies on the steel dissipated, and apart from being able to absorb spirits and changing their appearance, everything else remained the same as when Su Chen first went up the mountain to see a woman. Is it a dream? Su Chen was puzzled and carefully looked around. Is it a fantasy? Xiyue was also a bit confused because everything just now was too real. Is this? Xiyue suddenly found the sword pattern between Su Chen's forehead. The blue sword pattern was exactly the same as that in the Jade Hall. There are no patterns on Xiyue's forehead, except for the spiritual energy that converges and is instantly refined. There is only a body of yin and cold energy. Su Chen, on the other hand, is different. He doesn't have much breath, he just feels a bit more hungry than before. Spiritual body. Xiyue looked at Su Chen's body and was somewhat shocked. At this moment, there was a faint spiritual energy gathering in Su Chen's Danhai, and even his skin was refining spiritual energy. Upon hearing Xiyue's words, Su Chen also looked at her abdomen at a loss, as there was indeed a faint transparent cyclone. Senior sister, what is a spiritual body? Su Chen appeared very curious, as he had never really heard of it. Spiritual body is a special physique that can refine spiritual energy through the body and skin, without the need for deliberate exercise. It can also cultivate on its own. Xiyue explained in some speechless words, because Su Chen's curiosity made her feel that Su Chen was not very mature. So it's like this. Su Chen was a bit taken aback. He had heard that mortals could absorb spirits with their bodies when they reached a certain level of cultivation, and it was obvious that he had already touched the edge of that level. It's time to go to Qipon Mountain, Xiyue reminded Su Chen and pulled him towards the outside of the small courtyard. Wait. Su Chen quickly spoke up and bent down to pick up the golden little gourd in front of him. A pretty unique little gourd. Xiyue became curious about the gourd that Su Chen had just picked up. It must be a treasure, I don't know what level it is. Su Chen was puzzled and carefully looked at the golden gourd in his hand, saying, Are you also a cultivator, senior? After looking for a while, Su Chen tied the golden gourd around his waist and then took Xiyue's hand and walked outside the courtyard. Moving towards the position of Qipon Mountain, in less than 3 hours, Xiyue was exhausted and panting, and rested on a willow tree. Although Su Chen was also tired, there was not much pain, but rather a sense of inexplicable comfort. For the sake of Xiyue, Su Chen did not walk alone, but waited for Xiyue to come together, because Su Chen saw too many corpses in the crowd behind the Spring Wind Pavilion. Those corpses were not male, they were all female, ranging in age from 18 to 25.6, all naked, with a strong and viscous white liquid in their lower bodies. Obviously, someone has administered some strange medicine. He was thrown into the pile of 10,000 people and buried for 9 months and 10 days, but it was because of their blood and souls that he was revived through the Soul Transformation Sutra. Su Chen felt very sorry for those young women, because when he was sold as a slave, a few older slaves would take the risk of cutting their flesh in winter and then bring it back to the broken cave to mix with grass or bark to eat. Being forced to serve as a slave while alive, and having to leave the body intact after death is simply unbearable. Sometimes Su Chen really wanted to defend these girls, but when he came back to the Spring Breeze Pavilion, he realized that he was just a joke. The back mountain of Yichuan courtyard has been set up with formations, and I cannot enter at all. Moreover, there are many high-ranking officials stationed inside, so I am undoubtedly going to die. After all, he was not a fairy, just a slave who was bought and sold. After being revived, he hid for 3 months. Firstly, he borrowed their souls and blood for cultivation. 2. It's about thinking about how to save those girls who haven't been harmed yet. Within 3 months, Su Chen saw too many people, and he couldn't save anyone, including himself, because half of the high-ranking officials of the court had an harem in this Yichuan courtyard. Every night, the lights were brightly lit, and there were countless naked women. One high-ranking official even played with 20 or 30 women. What scares Su Chen the most is that a high-ranking official named Gao Li is not only cunning, but also ruthless in playing with women. That night, there were 6 18-year-old girls who had just been brought in by someone who didn't know where they came from. They were played to death by elevation overnight, and even after being thrown into the Spring Breeze Pavilion, they were still warm and their death was extremely tragic. Chapter 6. Chess Game, Part 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Chen took off the golden gourd and took a sip of wine, then looked at Xiyue resting against the willow tree. Looking at Xiyue's stunning face, he couldn't help but feel pity. He really likes the woman in front of him, but he is even more afraid that he cannot hold on. In his past life, he gave up everything for the sake of immortality, but in this life, he was caught off guard and had concerns. Still such a beautiful woman. Qingyang Sect is a renowned sect within this immortal mountain, known as the Gate of Justice. Although Su Chen hasn't been here for a long time, after 3 months of external interaction, he realized that his name doesn't match his reality. However, Su Chen did not kill the Qingyang sect with a single blow, but treated it objectively. After all, the elders of the Book Pavilion and Xiyue did not have that kind of bad intentions towards him. Looking at Su Chen, who was staring at her in a daze, Xiyue's face smiled, appearing pure and peaceful, with a flawless smile. Su Chen also smiled, wanting to protect this shallow smile. As the sky gradually brightened, there was a glimmer of light on the Qilin Forest Mountain. Su Chen helped Xiyue and walked towards the direction of Qipon Mountain again, unwavering. The mountains stretch endlessly and the scenery is picturesque for thousands of miles. However, after a while, Su Chen and Xiyue arrived at a corner of Qipon Mountain and gazed into the distance. Looking up, one can see the rippling blue waves and the vast ocean, like 1,000 hectares of glass. Runes appeared on the water surface, forming a chess game. The water was as flat as a mirror, and the runes appeared on the water surface as if there were poems in a painting. Although both Su Chen and Xiyue saw the chessboard on the water surface, it was still 1,000 miles away at this moment, and it was impossible to see what it was. 3 hours later, the chess game emerged from high altitude, with a staircase descending to the surface of the water. The player who enters the game is considered turbid, the player who holds the game is determined, and the player who controls the game is clear. The sound of aging echoed above the chessboard, now known as the 4 words and 4 rhythms, as if deliberately reminding Su Chen and Xiyue. Looking at the chess game, Su Chen did not hesitate, but stepped on the steps and steadfastly stood firm in his heart without hesitation. Although Xiyue was a bit worried, she didn't take a step back. She also mustered up the courage and stepped on it. The two of them entered the game and were separated, facing each other in pairs. This is Go. Looking at the stunning face across from him, Su Chen recalled the miserable look of the countless young girls behind the Spring Wind Pavilion. He did not move or ask the woman across from him. The change of chess pieces and the appearance of fire tigers, each person has 30.6, and each chess piece is a fire tiger. Su Chen and Xiyue were the chess players, and at this moment, the chess game transformed into a starry sky and a magnificent ancient city. Su Chen held a black chess piece, while Xiyue held a white chess piece. The two of them looked at each other quietly, without any desire to take action. On the purple thunder peak, Xuanyinzi and Qingyangzi sat cross-legged in the center of the mountain, gazing at the chess mountain image composed of array patterns. The purple thunder ball is suspended on the chessboard, seemingly corresponding to Su Chen and Xiyue. The dispute between emperors and kings is undoubtedly based on mountains and rivers as a bet, and the people as a bet. I don't know what choice they will make. Xianxi stroked her beard and sighed lightly, carefully gazing at the two players in the chess game. Alas, since ancient times, emperors have been mostly powerful and ambitious in pursuit of fame and profit, which is difficult to save. Qingyang sighed slightly and observed the chess game like Xuanhuan. The winner wins, the loser stays. The voice of the elderly in the chess game echoed again, and a crowd unexpectedly appeared in the city. Your Majesty, it's time for you to give the order. A soldier looked at Su Chen and waited for his decision. Realistic, too real. At this moment, Su Chen was wearing a yellow robe and holding over 1,000,000 soldiers. The red-eyed flame tiger was as high as a mountain. Your Majesty, Qingyang is ready to constantly invade me, Tingxing. Please order a counterattack. Xiye's side also supports over 1,000,000 soldiers, with 30.6 red-eyed fire tigers as tall as mountains. At this moment, neither side can see each other, only a small black dot in the army can be seen, and it is impossible to know who the other is. The fire tiger roared, with a majestic aura and eyes resembling copper bells. It was towering and strong enough to make people scream. With one leap, it charged towards the opposite army group, and the other party also rushed into our camp in the same way. The two teams have the same lineup but suffer equally heavy casualties, which means they only harm 1,000 enemies and self-harm 1,000. Looking at everything in front of her, Su Chen also felt helpless and sighed softly, the winner wins, the loser stays. Can we really win? Your Majesty, if we win, we will decide everything. If they lose, we can't leave them. The soldier reminded Su Chen, while the shadows behind were crying. If heaven and earth are games and we are chess pieces, do you think we can really win if we win? Su Chen looked at the soldiers and a group of followers, seemingly sighing at the impermanence of life. Only by living can we have hope. How can we know who wins and who loses without fighting? The soldiers' momentum was high, without any timidity. Even in the situation of heaven and earth, I desire to win half. Su Chen smiled slightly and recalled the words of Sword Cultivator. The way of cultivators is to govern people, immortals, heaven, and the way. I do not govern others, people want to govern me. If I were the Tao, no one can govern, no immortals can reach me, and heaven and earth are at their mercy. The sound from Su Chen's mouth was full of domineering aura. What he wanted was not to govern people, but to govern the way. Only the eternal way is the truth of the world. The soldiers were at a loss, all at a loss, waiting for Su Chen's orders. Will mountains and rivers die? Su Chen asked the soldiers in reverse. No, only animals, plants, and humans die, the soldier replied. What are you fighting for? Su Chen asked again. Strive for military achievements and become a high-ranking official. Defend our country. In order to no longer be bullied in the future. Because if we don't hit them, they will hit us. Su Chen nodded as he listened to the soldiers, pointed to the dragon robe, and spoke again. What do you plan to do when you sit in this position after peace in the world? I want to establish an harem. I will set up my palace throughout the world. The soldiers all have their own thoughts, similarities, and differences. They have different expressions and thoughts. If you sit in this position, will you still believe in the law and the law? Su Chen asked the soldiers again, this time they didn't speak, just remained silent. The greater the power, the easier it is for those who possess it to be greedy. When all the power is in their hands, will they still uphold it? The answer in Su Chen's heart is no. The Tao has no boundaries and the sky has no limits, so the earth can have no boundaries. The reason why the earth has boundaries is not because the Tao has boundaries with the sky, but because its soil is limited. The human heart is like the earth, and power is like the way and heaven. The reason why he cannot regain power is not because he has lost all his rights, but because he has already obtained all his rights and still desires dissatisfaction. There are very few people who can obtain power, but there are a lot of people who pursue it. Everyone wants to experience the rights that only a few people can obtain, so those in power use power as a tool to control others. Just like the iron laws of law. Su Qin came from time to time and was shrouded in this invisible rule since childhood. Before the age of 15, he could only be described as a slave and a life of survival. Since these things exist, they can be modified, but we need a leader, not something like a leader. The leader can only run in one direction, but he leads a group of people and treats them like clowns with power, solidifying their thinking. Leaders are different. What he says is thought-provoking. He doesn't need to demand anyone, nor does he need to play with power. His words will make the people he leads think deeply about self-discipline and self-improvement. Chapter 7. Chess Game, Part 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Killing is to prevent oneself and the people one values from being killed by others, and if the rules formulated do not conform to human, geographical, natural, or logical principles, it will lead to chaos in the world, artificial turmoil. Movement and stillness are opposite. If the person leading is not a foolish ruler, then one should pay attention to the officials under the ruler. Their power is not small, and it is easy to assist the monarch. After all, they have a large number of people and are very clever. For this situation, it is necessary for the people below to balance the situation. The ruler protects the people as the supervisor, while the minister protects the people as the supervisor. The ruler and the people supervise the minister, and the minister supports and encourages the people to supervise the ruler, which promotes the prosperity of the country. The matter of the spring breeze court is the inaction of the ruler and the people, because half of the ministers have already given the power to both sides, and no one can do anything about it. Su Qin naturally had no idea about the court's plans and actions, because it had been 8 or 9 years. If it weren't for the emperor's fainting, then the people were gone, and both were indispensable. Of course, it is also possible that the ruler has become a puppet before he faints, or that he is just a foolish ruler and is on the same level as a cunning minister. However, there are exceptions to everything, but the possibility is small, and the greatest possibility is that there is a big background behind those treacherous ministers. Otherwise, how could such a situation of people's livelihood be possible? Killing is difficult to save people, saving people is difficult to kill. If it is necessary to kill, then kill. If it is not necessary to kill, also kill those who have caused harm. Su Chen's words left the soldiers in a dilemma, because in their ears, Su Chen's words were: eliminate the root cause and leave no future troubles. If the people are strong, then the country is strong, and Su Chen also agrees with this statement. The country is determined by the people, and the people are determined by countless individuals. It is rumored that the Yongzheng dynasty was created by a group of people who ate grass, tree bark, and human flesh in the past to achieve its current prosperity. However, it is not the people below who are bustling, but the group of courtiers and their subordinates who have brains and small plans. Therefore, except for the two and the emperor, the people below are like pigs, cows, sheep, and dogs kept in captivity, unable to jump out of the enclosure. 1 or 2 of them will be caught by you and kept tightly closed. It is not the courtiers and their subordinates who eat meat, but they seek personal gain for themselves. Su Chen knew very well that the person facing him was Xiyue, and it was difficult for him to give orders. Whether to kill or not was meaningless because he was unsure if he could obtain the Tao immortal technique, cultivate it, and bring her back to life. He never intended to harm anyone, but the courtiers in this world are too adept at manipulating power and interests, causing the landlords below to become rampant, forcing slaves and maidservants to become objects of trade. If this continues, then this dynasty is not far from collapse. In every era, dogs bite dogs and pigs arch pigs, with only one purpose: to eat people. The courtiers represent order, but they reverse the heavenly gang and the yin and yang. If there are many people above, will there still be a matter of destroying the country? The answer is no, because we are all strong countries now. Apart from internal troubles, where else can there be external threats? There are very few natural disasters, but many man-made disasters. The round method is a good thing to save people, but unfortunately it has become a pain for courtiers and foolish rulers. If it is not round, it is already there. If it is round, it is like cutting their flesh, causing pain. The remaining is the gate to save the world from the sea of suffering, which can allow people in this world to have no more suffering and sorrow in this life. Unfortunately, in the next life, they can practice this method again, otherwise the sorrow will be difficult to overcome. That's right, it's about killing everyone and freeing oneself from the physical body, but treating the symptoms, not the root cause, not the soul, because the world of cultivators will not break without cutting off the cause. Circle method. The sound of aging echoed from the sky, uttering 3 wonderful words in a row. As everything around miraculously disappeared, Su Chen and Xiyue returned to the game, facing the familiar scene in front of them. On the purple thunder peak of the 10,000 zhang peak, Qingyang and Xuanhuan were slightly stunned. They saw the purple thunder ball flying towards the direction of Qipan Mountain, shimmering with a pink-purple light. The red-eyed fire tiger in the chess game transformed into purple energy and infiltrated the bodies of Su Chen and Xiyue. Their bodies improved once again, appearing incredibly fast. In just a few days, Su Chen and Xiyue surpassed the later stage of the Lotus Transformation realm and went directly to the early stage of the Tongling realm. In the blink of an eye, the purple thunder pearl had already arrived at the top of their heads, irrigated by spiritual energy. Su Chen's face was grim, and his whole body was scorched with purple electricity. However, within his Danhai, there was a tremendous change. Xiyue was the same. Although she was electrocuted, she was able to carve out a sea of breath within the Danhai. Although it is not a spectacular geometry, it gathers the essence of the whole body, which seems to be the source of life. With the lingering purple light, every breath has a feeling of refining bones and marrow. The spiritual power lingering on Su Chen and Xiyue's bodies carried pink and purple lightning, as if they had undergone wonderful changes. Without repeated refinement, they could rest under the purple lightning. Is this the feeling of cultivating immortality? At this moment, Su Chen's soul sea transformed into a breath sea. Although it was only 6 meters away, the 6 consciousnesses were extremely sensitive. And this? Su Chen's mind twitched slightly as his spiritual power transformed into a protective shield, seemingly indestructible. On the purple thunder peak, the towering peak, Xuanhuan was shocked and couldn't help but exclaim, "I didn't expect their talents to be so strong that they were the ultimate constitutions in the early stages of spiritual communication, with an unparalleled breath sea realm." Qingyang was also equally shocked. Although it may seem easy to write freely, in reality, it is extremely difficult and dangerous to take this step. The energy of the purple thunder ball in the chess game is exhausted, and the purple seal pattern inside the ball is also absorbed by the 2 players' breath sea, transforming into a special energy to strengthen the breath sea. The pink-purple spiritual pattern appeared on the forehead of Xiyue, appearing charming and moving, like a fairy in the sky. On the purple thunder peak of Yongzheng mountain, Qingyang and Xuanhuan had just taken a sip of tea before suddenly spitting it back into their cups. Unexpectedly transformed into purple thunder bloodline. Xuanhuan couldn't believe her own eyes. It should be because the yin and yang in their bodies were transformed into Tai Xian Qi, which prevented this extremely strong energy from harming them. Qingyang seemed to ponder. Aren't they on par with their master? The crown prince looked at Qingyang with a hint of curiosity. I'm not sure. Qingyang couldn't tell either, after all, he had never seen the power of that Tai Xian Qi. Tai Xian Qi does not belong to any attribute, it is like the line separating yin and yang, and it also changes with the change of cultivation, so he does not understand. I don't know if they will succeed. Both Qingyangzi and Xuanhuan sighed. This was their second time sighing. They watched as Xiyue grew up, with extraordinary talent and should have existed like a heavenly pride, but it made her wait for 13 years. And that young man was even more concerning, as they could see that his spiritual stripes had not changed, indicating that his bloodline was significant. Su Chen and Xiyue got out of the chess game and stayed on the mountaintop for a full 7 days. On the 7th day, they finally moved their heads. The clouds are ethereal, as if they will collapse at any moment. The vast green abyss and endless mountains and rivers are infinitely beautiful, making people feel relaxed and happy. Su Chen and Xiyue seemed to have forgotten the time, and they stared at the sky like this, seemingly watching something. In their pupils, a pink-purple thunderbolt moved, reflecting a purple aura above the sky, as if it were a huge map. The purple towers on the map are quite dazzling and cannot be counted at all. A snowflake-like imprint was placed between the purple images, seemingly indicating something. Both Su Chen and Xiyue were at a loss, completely unable to understand what it meant. Chapter 8. Yongzheng Dynasty. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. For a long time, the sky was already late and the moon's shadow was slightly visible. The clouds were not too thick, but they projected onto the human world. Su Chen and Xiyue returned to the small courtyard in the bamboo forest, where the breeze accompanied the wine and the beautiful women were together, appearing peaceful and pleasant. The gentle breeze caresses, and the ripples of bamboo shadows dance with the wind. Occasionally, there is a rustling sound. Su Chen lay the beautiful woman in his arms, sitting on a stone chair. His exquisitely clear wine glass swayed slightly and he took a small sip. The fragrance is overflowing, sweet and delicious, like the nectar and jade dew, making people feel refreshed and clear in their senses. What kind of liquor is it? Su Chen appeared somewhat curious, then picked up another glass of liquor from the stone table and gently placed it on the lips of the beautiful woman in her arms. Xiyue opened her mouth slightly and took a careful sip. Her beautiful eyes were full of surprise, and she took another sip. Is this still wine? Xiyue looked up at the handsome man Su Chen who was holding her, her beautiful eyes filled with curiosity. Xian Qiong. Suddenly, a soft and beautiful female voice came from Su Chen's heart, but only Su Chen could hear this voice. On the way back, Su Chen was already aware of her existence, and it was the hostess who slapped him with this sound at the time. The wine that Su Chen tasted was given by her, but Xiyue was not clear about it. Instead, she thought it was something that Su Chen had brought with him when he came. On Su Chen's left hand was a peculiar black ring, which appeared ancient and simple. At this moment it was faintly appearing semi-transparent. According to the woman, this ring is named Tianji and was worn by an ancient sect leader. It comes from outside the sky. The woman who saved Su Chen twice in life and death was the beautiful woman. Although she was extremely beautiful, she was in the form of a soul, attached to the painted black extreme sword. According to the woman, the ancient sect is called Tianji sect, which is a remarkable great sect. However, Su Chen was not particularly interested, only the immortal cultivation method and Xiyue that made him interested. Is our marriage agreement good? Su Chen looked at the woman in his arms, his face calm, and his eyes full of indulgence. Why? Xiyue was curious because she had an inexplicable liking for Su Chen and really loved him. So that we can be together forever in this life, I don't want to lose you halfway. Su Chen appeared very serious, gently stroking Xiyue's cheek with his hand. Xiyue's face was complex, but her eyes were full of indulgence. She obediently nodded, expressing her willingness. The black sword is not the Blackwater sword, but the Tianji sword, which was once the treasure of the Tianji sect and an invincible existence in the world. However, at this moment, it is no longer as sharp as before, but has become much more introverted, because it has fought against its master in the sky and the road, and it is only a part of that sword. The heavenly sword is released, and the soul seal is quickly formed. The souls of the two are drawn, and their hearts have a spiritual connection. Xiyue couldn't apologize. Su Chen's heart was filled with tears of sorrow, and his handsome face was filled with guilt for Xiyue. A white crystal emerged from the space of the sword's heart, and Xiyue was instantly frozen. She was sealed in that small crystal by Su Chen, seemingly becoming a living fossil. Do you really want to do this? The woman's voice seemed to hesitate and couldn't help but remind her. According to the woman, the bloodline inside Su Chen's body is the heavenly extreme bloodline, which is awakened only by every leader of the heavenly extreme sect. It is the heavenly level bloodline, and Su Chen is the chosen person. The world is full of sorrow and countless pains. I need to overcome all the hardships and not let her suffer. Su Chen's tone was firm, and her eyes were incredibly deep, as if she had gone from the age of 15 to 50. He didn't have any unnecessary changes, but looked at everything in front of him and withdrew the crystal back into his sword. After taking a few sips, Su Chen put away his tea set and walked back towards the path of Xianin Peak. On the purple thunder peak of the 10,000 Zhang Peak, Qingyang and Xuanhuan exchanged a glance, both of whom showed a fearful expression. Is that girl Xiyue really letting him take her away like this? Xuanhuan anxiously looked at Qingyang. I don't know how to handle it well either. Qingyang's face looked grim, unsure of what to do for a moment. Let her go, maybe it's fate. The old voice came from the clouds on Purple Thunder Peak, carrying the aura of Tai Xian. Master. Qingyang and Xuanhuan stood up at the same time, speaking in unison, appearing extremely respectful. The Tai Xian Qi enveloped every piece of land in the Qingyang sect, transforming intangible energy into an iron blade that dissipated memories, erasing everything about Su Chen. Is it him? The woman's voice echoed in Su Chen's mind. Who did the senior say? Su Chen looked very strange. It's nothing, just a little kid. The woman's voice was very casual, as if an elder were talking about a younger generation. Su Chen could feel that the fluctuation of that energy was both soft and resilient, as if one thought could turn it into soft water, and as if one thought could turn it into a steel blade. Let's go, the woman's voice reminded Su Chen, and then she said seriously, our bloodline of Tianji sect must not fall into the hands of others. Upon hearing the woman's reminder, Su Chen nodded in agreement and decided to go to the kingdom of the immortal mountain outland. The Yongzheng Dynasty. The Yongzheng Dynasty is located in the southwest direction, which is the largest and wealthiest country in the mainland. Countless people are trying to go there, but no one has succeeded because it is a country full of danger and crisis, and even a slight mistake can lead to death. There is a special connection between the Yongzheng Dynasty and various major forces on the mainland. Every once in a while, the mainland will summon sects to go to the Yongzheng Dynasty for bloodshed, and every sect that goes to the Yongzheng Dynasty will suffer a catastrophic disaster. The Yongzheng Dynasty is a kingdom where the strong are respected, a world where the weak prey on the weak, and there is no friendship in that world. On this continent, there is only a distinction between the strong and the weak. Xiyue, when I become that immortal, it will be your awakening day. Su Chen murmured softly, his eyes filled with warmth and affection. Su Chen's back gradually faded and eventually disappeared. The sky was shrouded in dark clouds, with lightning constantly falling and roaring, as if foreshadowing a storm. The entire Yongzheng dynasty was plunged into panic. At this moment, on the summit of Purple Thunder Peak, the towering peak of Qingyang sect, Qingyang and Xuanhuan are watching this scene. Brother Qingyang, what do you think of this matter? Xuanhuan frowned. I always feel like something's wrong. Qingyang stroked her beard and involuntarily shook her head slightly. I think this matter is definitely not simple, and that young man named Su Chen is not something in the pool either. Xianyin squinted her eyes. I hope he doesn't make any impulsive actions, otherwise our Qingyang sect won't be able to protect him. Qingyang remained silent, with a strong worry in his eyes, as if an inexplicable force was pulling at his heartstrings. Qingyang and Xuanhuan stood together, their faces different. "Master, what should we do now?" Xuanhuan asked. "Let's wait and see, this incident happened strangely and we must be cautious," Qingyang Hongshan said. Xuanhuan didn't speak anymore, but stood on the side, waiting quietly for the situation to develop. A cold light shone through Su Chen's eyes, as if he was thinking about something, while an infinite aura emanated from around his body. Step by step, Su Chen slowly stepped forward, seemingly searching for something. Suddenly, a huge stone tablet appeared in front of him. "Is this?" Su Chen looked up and saw two big characters written on it, Tianji. Su Chen whispered, with a strong expression in his eyes. Chapter 9. Jumps. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When it comes to killing people, we still need to use something heavy, Su Chen realized after hearing the woman's voice. The woman used extreme patterns to bring a large stone tablet. "One is too few, we need more, that's faster." The woman's voice rang out, and dozens of stone tablets quickly fell into the territory of the Yongzheng dynasty. The beam of light rose up into the sky, transforming into a huge transformation formation. The heavenly sword emerged, and the female protagonist of that figure had already appeared, emitting an evil aura. "I've told you that devouring blood and transforming evil saved you twice again, so you're mine." The woman was seductive and beautiful, with her red lips even more dazzling. "Senior, what do you mean by this?" Su Chen looked horrified, and the woman's stunning eyes seemed not very similar to her at this moment. "Don't be nervous, I don't have any malicious intentions, I just want to be your woman and let you play with me." The woman smiled mischievously, her delicate body pressed against Su Chen's chest, constantly twisting and pinching, and her jade fingers lightly caressed Su Chen's face. The formation is suddenly activated. In an instant, blood surged within the Yongzheng dynasty, and a blood-colored figure quickly flew out and came behind the demonic woman. "My disciple is forever conquering the king of the dynasty. I wish you had met your master." The woman had a cold face and deep eyes, holding 3 jade boxes made of blood crystals in her hand. The jade box presents a blood color overall, and its interior is transparent like crystals. One is a jet black bloodline, the other one is a dark red blood pill, and the remaining one is a beating golden heart. This. Su Chen's face was covered in sweat, his blood and heart were both harmed and dug away by someone during the first and second times. "Master, everything is ready and we can start." Xiyue looked respectfully at the demonic woman and handed over 3 blood crystal jade boxes. The female demon smiled and transformed into a demon, emitting a terrifying power that intimidated the soul. Although she looked incredibly beautiful, her cold and bloody aura was truly frightening. Thousands of blood flew in, all flying into the heavenly extreme sword. The demonic woman directly raised her hand and grabbed Su Chen, as if trying to hold him in her hand. "Senior, you." Su Chen knew that this demonic woman was extraordinary, and it was also difficult for him to figure out what had happened. When Su Chen thought he was finished, he was stunned. This was a strange spatial world made up of special crystals, as if it were a dream. As soon as Su Chen turned around, his face changed instantly, and he saw a jade clean big hand approaching his own door. "Pa!" Su Chen's eyes returned to normal, while the demonic woman who was about to take Su Chen away just now covered her eyebrows and her face was extremely pale. "You." The demonic woman was about to speak when her face suddenly turned pale and her eyes were filled with terror. "Little witch, I didn't expect you to be so determined." The voice of a stranger boy echoed in the world, as if it had come from ancient times, murky and profound, shaking the soul of the demonic woman. "You haven't died yet," the demonic woman exclaimed in shock, only hearing her voice but not seeing her. The woman looked around in all directions as if she had gone crazy and shouted, "You don't live well. You die everywhere. Where are you?" Su Chen and Xiyue were more bewildered than anyone at this moment. How could the new master they met go crazy before they even started cultivating immortality? Senior, you. Just as Su Chen was about to speak, he slapped his face and almost knocked Su Chen down in midair. Who? Su Chen was full of shock and palpitations, completely unaware of what had happened. Xiyue's face was also pale, with eyes full of fear, staring fixedly at everything in front of her. Pop. Su Chen and Xiyue were swept back to reality by an invisible hand, and their situation was very bad. I saw dark clouds covering my head, the sky and earth changing colors, and black thunder pressing down on my head, making me feel like the end of the world. Kid, you really... The voice of the unfamiliar boy seemed to be blaming, and then disappeared. The pitch-black thunder turned into 100 layers of seal, and a deadly seal fell from the sky into Su Chen's eyebrows, blocking his soul. The floating dust of heaven and earth, all sentient beings are sons, so you should call yourself Tianqian Z. It was the voice of the unfamiliar young man who seemed to be sighing, giving Su Chen a brand new name directly. Su Chen was slightly stunned. He did not hear what the young man had said, but the three words, Tianqianzi, inexplicably came to mind. Miracle. Su Chen was at a loss and didn't understand why he had such thoughts. With the end of the seal between heaven and earth, everything returned to tranquility, as if it had never happened before. Su Chen and Xiyue suddenly felt heavy, and only when they opened their eyes did they realize that they were sinking at lightning speed. 10,000 feet high. This place is incredibly high. Scared, the two turned pale and restless. Time and space were stationary at the same time, and the two of them were caught up in a world that was like a mirror and water moon, like a dream. The starry sky is boundless, shooting stars fall, and the sky is filled with a different kind of romance. Where are we? Xiyue's trembling voice asked Su Chen anxiously. I'm not quite sure. Su Chen's mind was a mess, his eyes fixed on the star, and the scenes in his mind kept changing, but none of them were true. The stars seemed to be playing something, and Su Chen didn't want to guess because he knew it must be a shocking battle, otherwise there wouldn't be such a scene. Little one, you stay in this world. Su Chen's ear seemed to be someone talking to him. Who are you? Su Chen asked in confusion. You don't need to know, I will be here with you until you wake up. That voice was very peaceful, as if an old man was taking care of the child. Although Su Chen did not see that person, he felt the deep love and affection in his soul, feeling even more intimate. Do you hold your sword and move forward, or do you stand at your feet? Su Chen involuntarily asked herself, as if one person was divided into two, unfamiliar and familiar. In front of Xiyue was a little girl. In this country, women are superior to men, and what she saw was the opposite of what Su Chen saw at the Spring Wind Pavilion. Women in that era were powerful, and playing with men was no exception. The mass grave has never been buried, it's just a journey from today's women to past men, and from past men to today's women. The scenes seen by Su Chen and Xiyue were exchanged, and both sides watched the repetition of history. Heaven and earth are clear, and time and space intersect. Countless possibilities make Su Chen and Xiyue's hearts tremble, and they also realized their respective paths. Becoming an immortal does not necessarily lead to enlightenment, and enlightenment does not necessarily lead to becoming an immortal. Su Chenwu found the way to save the world and the way to save people, but Xiyue chose either, the way to save people. Outside the Yongzheng dynasty, the boy and girl bid farewell and each went to exercise their own way. Both of them seemed to have forgotten about the enchanting and beautiful woman. As Su Chen climbed mountains and valleys, his mood was no longer the past, but the present. The hardships of the journey turned into a sense of contentment, as if he was possessed by a demon. Despite being able to fly with a sword, he traveled a long distance. The Tianji sword has transformed into a trace of energy in his blood vessels, although slightly stronger, it is no different from ordinary cultivation. The small wine pot remains the same, but the young man is no longer the same as before, but now a miscellaneous disciple of Xuanzong. Tianchenzi. Tianchenzi, as its name suggests. A chess piece that appears to float like dust in the world. In addition to taking care of miscellaneous tasks, he also insists on refining swords every day. The spiritual cultivation laws in the Lotus Sutra accumulate over time, and before 3 months, his state of mind becomes as calm as water. Chapter 10. Hot Springs, Part 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a distant country, the country is peaceful and the people are prosperous. A stunning woman wearing a dragon robe is looking up at the starry sky, touching her heart with one hand and crossing the other. She was exactly Xiyue from the beginning, her heart was golden, but her blood was black. Su Qin gave her blood and golden heart to Xiyue, hoping to help her fulfill her dreams. In the Qingyang Peak Miscellaneous Pavilion outside the Xuanzong Sect, a young man is taking care of miscellaneous work. Every time he finishes a domain miscellaneous work, he reads a few pages of books. Tianqian Junior Brother, why are you working so hard? Are you trying to enter the inner gate through hard work? The friars don't rank in order of seniority. Only strength is everything. At this time, an old man named Wu Tai was speaking, and he was an old man outside Qingyang Peak. He is a relatively honest person and the most hard-working disciple in this outer sect. Unfortunately, his talent is poor and he has been practicing the Qingyang sword classic for 60 years, but he has never entered the inner sect. Senior brother Wu Tai, you're here. Tianchenzi didn't say much, just replied with a greeting. Junior brother, you've been at Qingyang Peak for 6 months now. Why are you still reading? Although Wu Tai is old, his eyes are very sharp. He looked left and right and suddenly rushed up to Tianchenzi, taking the ancient book from her hand by surprise. Fu Jing. Wu Tai is a veteran of the outside world. He still knows something about this ancient book. What's so nice about this? Wu Tai frowned and directly put the book back on the bookshelf. Let's go, senior brother will take you to the Jade Maiden Pavilion to observe the superior mind techniques, ensuring that you can quickly learn and attain enlightenment as soon as possible. Wu Tai gave Tianchenzi a profound and rare glance, which was only this time. Jade Lady Pavilion, is it the Heart Sutra? Tianchenzi was curious and couldn't help but look at Wu Tai. As a traveler, he is naturally interested in advanced martial arts, after all, his pursuit in his past life was longevity. Ah! Wu Tai was slightly stunned, then smiled mysteriously and patted Tianchenzi's shoulder, saying, that's right. As long as you observe that Heart Sutra, your mind is like water, and the Tao is as simple as ever. Wu Tai is a rare honest person who treats people with kindness in ordinary days, so Tianchenzi still admires this elder martial brother, who also decides to follow Wu Tai to explore the mystery of the Heart Sutra. In the clear bamboo forest behind the Jade Maiden Pavilion at the outer gate of the Jade Maiden Peak, there are dozens or even hundreds of hot springs scattered. Wu Tai was taking Tianchenzi and hiding in a slightly foggy hot spring. Senior brother Wu, aren't we here to observe the Heart Sutra? Tianchenzi looked very puzzled. He looked around in confusion and said to Wu Tai, it doesn't look like there is the Heart Sutra here. Shu, Wu Tai gestured to Tianchenzi in a low voice, then smiled and said, Junior brother, this Heart Sutra is a spiritual object that can only be understood by heart, not transmitted lightly. Spiritual object. Tianchenzi's originally skeptical mind also dispelled his thoughts and couldn't help but say, there are countless methods in the mystical world. The Fu Jing, Dan Jing, Qi Jing, and formation technique are all quite mysterious and can be called spiritual objects. It seems that this Heart Jing is indeed an excellent mental technique. Quickly. Dive. Wu Tai quickly dragged Tianchenzi into the bottom of the hot spring, seemingly avoiding something. Tianchenzi has just arrived at midnight in the 6th month of Xuanzong, and has only been practicing in the early stage of the beginner's spiritual realm until now. Although there has not been much change, he still barely knows how to avoid water. As the things above sank, Tianqianzi also noticed the columnar objects, but couldn't see clearly what they were. He worked hard, but still couldn't see clearly. Suddenly, several soft objects fell off the pillar, and Tianqianzi curiously swam over, thinking it was the spiritual object, Heart Sutra. Wu Tai's face changed greatly at this moment, and he quickly used a mysterious technique to let Tianqianzi see the scene in front of him clearly. Unfortunately, it was too late, and he also decided to use his escape technique and disappeared at the bottom of the spring. What is this? Tianqianzi picked up the soft patterned scarves with ties at the bottom of the water. When the curious Tianqianzi saw Qingming in front of him, he was stunned and couldn't help but wonder, is this thing that looks like a woman's item really the Heart Sutra? However, Tianqianzi carefully looked at them and then picked up 6 or 7 more. He murmured to himself, the patterns on these things are unique. Although they are very similar to those of mortal dust, they are definitely treasures within Xuanzheng. Tianqianzi sat cross-legged at the bottom of the spring, carefully observing the patterns on these things and beginning to comprehend. Above the hot spring, many disciples of the Jade Maiden Peak are enjoying a bath with their faces on. Our treatment at Jade Maiden Peak is better. After completing our daily cultivation, we can come here to soak in hot springs. Yes, it's so comfortable to even remove all the bubbles. Cherish it all. In the future, if you want to go to the new Emperor city of the Shenzhou continent to learn more advanced martial arts, it is best for us to refine our physical body as soon as possible. The Tianqianzi in the bottom of the spring has already entered the country, and at this moment, his mind is in the breathing sea within his eyebrow space, pondering the scattered inscriptions in front of him. The Sea of Qi does not have a large area of 500 zhang, which means that even if you use your divine power, you can clearly understand it from 50-100 zhang around your body. At the center of the sea was the heavenly dust child, who was in the pattern. He carefully observed and pondered, and then suddenly realized. As recorded in the Talisman Sutra, the spirit pattern inscription, the inscription pattern symbol, is clever inside, capable of attacking and defending. Tianqianzi uses the characteristics of eyebrow and soul patterns to pull and apply energy to form a clever pattern, forming an inscription pattern, and then uses the inscription pattern to form a clever rune pattern. Looking at the blue runes in front of him, Tianqianzi also became interested and repeated the construction of runes and familiar textures within the Sea of Breath. I don't know if this unique pattern can be used for other 3 techniques besides the Talisman Classic. Tianqianzi was somewhat surprised, and he conceived it again in his mind. It is extremely difficult to forcefully compress energy with spiritual patterns on a piece of paper, but it also requires the integration of cleverness, which is like ascending to heaven. Tianqianzi did not have the thought of giving up, but repeated it over and over again. Is it Quan Ling? A group of women gathered around the bottom of the spring, carefully staring at Tianqianzi, who was motionless and with his eyes closed. He actually holds our underwear. The women were bewildered and constantly sat cross-legged around Tianqianzi, seeming to be enlightened. Let's start practicing. I heard that the spring spirit takes millions of years to become a spirit. If we refine it, we will definitely wash our tendons and bones, and practice for thousands of miles in a day. Obviously, those underwater naked women treated Tianqianzi as a spiritual object and never doubted that he was a real person. For several hours, a group of naked women were still using a method to refine the surprisingly quiet Tianqianzi, but they still couldn't find the problem. It has to be said that these female disciples are really persistent. Is it necessary to? A woman suddenly blushed and murmured, double cultivation. This. A group of female disciples looked at each other, all blushing with beautiful faces. Tianqianzi's sea of consciousness is covered with blue runes, each one exquisitely crafted, with thousands of them arranged neatly, like upright lines of poetry. Indeed, It is mysterious and worthy of what senior brother Wu Tai called a spiritual object, which can have many wonderful uses. Tianquanzi couldn't help but sigh lightly, his face filled with joy. After 3 hours, the female disciples who were practicing double cultivation around Tianquanzi exhausted themselves, fell asleep, and remained motionless. It's time to give it a try with your physical body. Tianquanzi sighed softly as he saw the Si Chuandi. Tianquanzi opened her eyes and began to condense, although slowly, a blue talisman pattern still appeared. Ha! At this moment, Tianquanzi noticed a group of young women lying beside him, and he looked very real and careful. Body posture, curves, and skin are all top-notch among the best, with about 36 people carefully counted.